Hello world, welcome back to Razor RC. Today we are doing the cheap radio shootout. So I've got in front of us 3 radios sent to me from Banggood. I got these all for free, so I don't think I'm particularly biased to any one radio versus another. But I wanted to do a shootout basically comparing the 3 cheap radios and try to find out which is the best radio, which is kind of the best value and the one I would pick if I needed to buy a radio from Banggood. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money, maybe you broke your RTR radio, you're looking for something cheap or maybe a slight upgrade on what you're already using, these are 3 that I would definitely consider. Over on the left, we have the Dumbo Rc X6. This sells for about $28 on Banggood. It's a 6-channel radio, has gyro, pretty good and well-received radio. A lot of people have picked this up and done reviews, so definitely one you will want to look at. In the middle is the Austar AX5S. Not a radio I'm super familiar with, but Banggood mentioned that this is another one of their super popular radios. This sells for about $35, although I have seen the price fluctuate quite a bit. Oftentimes it's very comparable in price with the Dumbo RC, but at the time of this video, it is about $35. 3-channel radio, 2.4 gigahertz, and looks very, very similar to an old Spectrum radio. I think it was called the DX3L. The mold of the actual radio itself looks like pretty much identical. Some small changes to like the base and the handle and stuff like that, but definitely was based on the Spectrum DX3L, though I don't think they are compatible. Finally, we have another super popular radio, the Flysky FS-GT3C. I've got quite a bit of experience with this radio, and so they sent one out to me for review as well, and just wanted to cover that. Now this also varies in price a little bit, but generally sells for about $50. At the time of this video, it is selling for $49 from Banggood. So we're gonna do basically a comparison and basically pick a winner from 3rd place to 1st place, which radio I think is the best, 2nd and 3rd place, and talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each radio. So let's get into it. In 3rd place, I'm going to go with the Austar AX5S. So $35, pretty basic radio, just a 3-channel radio, probably better than most RTR radios, 2.4 gigahertz, does take 4 AA batteries here on the bottom. Pretty basic and inexpensive receiver. I think these go for about $5 or $6, 3-channel. So you got your steering, your throttle, and then a separate button for auxiliary here. A decent amount of dials, so steering trim, throttle trim, and dual rate for your steering as well. Turning it on off, you actually have a couple of batteries, power, and low voltage. And then up top, a few other things. You've got steering reversing for your and throttle reversing, as well as a throttle limiter. So that is the only radio of these 3 that actually has a throttle limiter. So you go, I think it's 175 and 50% throttle. So if you're giving this to a kid or somebody who's not that experienced with an RC car, it is nice to be able to just kind of dial down the throttle with that little switch there. And then of course a bind button as well. Nice foam wheel, integrated antenna, decent shape, although I felt like this radio is probably the most kid-like, meaning the grip is actually very, very vertical and extremely close to this little throttle trigger. The throttle trigger itself also has a very small hole for a finger. I don't have super like fat fingers, but you know, it barely fits my finger, and you feel like the trigger is really, really close to your hand. So in my opinion, probably the best choice for a kid's radio. Now the foam wheel feels really good. Bit of wobble and play there, you know, probably average for like an RTR radio, but this is about $35. Downsides of this radio, it is extremely basic, not a whole lot going on here. I would have preferred to see like endpoint adjustment or something like that. Now the funny thing about this is it looks like it's based off the Spectrum DX3L, although that originally actually had endpoint adjustment, and you can kind of see these little hole or cutouts where there used to be little dials. So the Spectrum version, actually you could adjust each endpoint. Would have liked to have seen it on that, and I believe even the older versions of this radio actually had that adjustment, but for whatever reason, maybe to cut down costs or something, they took that out. So lastly, in terms of performance, I felt like this was kind of the most vague. Really didn't feel quite as connected. I actually put all 3 of these radios in my Team Associate B6.2 on the track, on carpet, to just basically test the performance, see how well and how easy it is to control a vehicle. I felt like this one was the most vague and you know, probably the least race oriented. So finally, you know, $35 is a little bit pricey, especially compared to the Dumbo RC. I think if it were cheaper, you know, sort of in the low $20 range, it might jump up a spot or two. But at this price point and what you get and kind of the overall performance and feature wise, this comes up in third place for me. In second place, I'm going with the Flysky FS-GT3C. So this sells for about $50. It is on the high end among the three radios we have in front of us, but a super popular radio. It's been around for, you know, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. It's a very popular radio. If you look up on the forums or on Facebook groups or whatever, a lot of people like this radio. A lot of people recommend it, and I can understand why. It's definitely the most fully featured of the three of these. So you got a little power button here, and you can see a really nice backlit display. You have a lot of different options. It is multi-model memory, so you can hook this up to more. If you got more than one RC car, you can put a receiver in each, and then basically use one radio to drive whichever car you want. So that is a huge advantage. Collapsible antenna, big display, sort of a dot matrix type display, and then you got all the adjustments you want: name, reversing, endpoint adjustment, which is super key, all your trims, expo, even has ABS, so a little bit of anti-lock brake system, dual rates. So yeah, really nice feature wise overall. It is only 3 channels, although there are hacks out there that people will update the firmware with to get more channels. I think like 5 or 6 channels or something like that, and you know, I didn't do that because I'm just trying to review this radio, but certainly feature wise really nice. Foam wheel, drop down wheel, even comes with like a little lithium ion battery right there. So you can actually just charge it through this little port on the back. Nice rubberized grip, and then here's your little dual rate and channel 3 trim, and then your channel 3 switch here on the thumb. So feature wise, this thing knocks it out of the park. It is way higher than these other 2 radios, but on the downside, I have a lot of experience with this radio, and I do feel like the quality of this is a little bit lower. I mean, definitely I've seen people break springs on the steering wheel. We've done that actually. A friend of mine had one of these. Overall quality is not super high. The lithium ion battery can go bad. Just, you know, the menu system is like backwards for whatever reason. You know, when you scroll left, it turns right, and vice versa. You like this back button is like something you would never actually use. You always have to use kind of this N button, which is basically the enter button. So the interface on how to use this menu is probably the worst of any radio I've ever used. It is really bad, almost impossible to actually set things correctly the first time, but it does actually have the adjustments, additional buttons up here for your throttle and steering. So while I think the actual features are really high, I did not feel like the quality of this radio is super high, and I do feel like, you know, I do have some concerns that this thing is probably the least reliable or most fragile of the 3 of them. They kind of cut some costs in that area in the quality, so it may be a little bit better than it used to be. I have noticed that the performance actually seems improved from the last FS-GT3C I used, you know, a few years back. I did find that one of the ones we had, just not very linear throttle and steering, but this one is much improved. It actually drives reasonably nicely. So yeah, if you really need all those features, you really need the multi-model memory. I mean, endpoint adjustment and stuff is always really nice. You need 3 channels. It feels good in your hand. You got that lithium ion battery, so you definitely get a lot in the box, but I think they miss a little bit on the execution and the quality. So second place for me, the Flysky FS-GT3C. So that leaves us with the winner of this comparison, the Dumbo Rc X6. I think this is the best radio of the bunch. Sells for about $28, kind of plus or minus a few dollars depending on when you buy it. Comes in couple different colors, pink and blue at the time of this video. The manual actually is improved quite a bit. So the old one had some mistakes. They talked about things like ABS and stuff. It does not have ABS, but it does have a gyro included, so that is pretty nice technology if you're running on loose dirt especially. 6-channel radio, which is pretty outrageous. But anyways, you got your normal throttle and steering reversing. You got your throttle and steering trim, as well as throttle and steering dual rate. On-off button here. channel 4, channel 3, and then channel 5 and 6 are up here, analog dials, so that's pretty cool. A nice little blue LED, you can actually change the colors. So yeah, it even has a charging port, although I don't know if that actually works. I would have to use like rechargeable batteries or something, but the only real downside, no foam wheel. It is kind of this hard plastic thing, but the response on this thing is really, really good. They actually use radio link technology in their receiver and their radio, so you're kind of getting a higher end electronics in a very low budget price type of radio. So overall, I think this is the best radio. Feels good in your hand. I would recommend getting some sort of foam wheel. I actually have a video on that, how to take this off and put on a foam wheel adjustment. The manual, it is not super good. Still a little bit hard to understand. They did improve it, so I'm glad to see they actually made improvements in that area. But yeah, overall, a high quality radio, 2.4 gigahertz integrated antenna, and it has super long range. I'm not a big, speed run type guy or do super long range type stuff, but this is considered to have one of the longest ranges of sort of like this entry level radio class. So for me, the best radio in this is the Dumbo Rc X6. If you need more features, some people would consider the Flysky, but at $50, I think it's worth spending maybe another $20 and going up to the next Flysky, the FS-GT5. I'll put down links to all these radios in the description below, so you can pick up whichever one you want, but I like this radio the best and definitely worth buying. Now, the only other downside I don't like is it does not have any sort of endpoint adjustment. It only has steering dual rate. That is probably the key adjustment I like on the Flysky FS-GT3 a little bit better. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely hit the like, share, subscribe button. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.